Um, uh, Rob White, thank you for giving us some time here. The Ghost of White Hart Lane. Why is it called the Ghost of White Hart Lane?
Very simply, because that was the nickname that was given to my dad when he was at. Like most good stories, there's several versions. Several people, uh, several people say it was when he was at White Hart. Well, obviously it was at White Hart Lane, but there's a Scottish journalist whose name I've escaped me from the late 50s, early 60s, who maintains that he was the one that called in the ghost when he was in Scotland, but the simple truth for me, the one that resonates, is that obviously his nickname at White Hart Lane when he was at White Hart Lane was the Ghost of White Hart Lane, which as a kid, we'll probably delve into this, but as a kid not knowing my dad, I was 6 months old when he died, um, having that just the strange contradictions around ghosts and around being a child, and we're told to be scared of ghosts, and I wondered whether he was called the ghost after he died, or so there's lots of stuff there, but actually, so the play is called that simply because, well, I guess it's named as well after the biography that Julie Welsh and I wrote, 2011, I think it was 2012 maybe. Yeah, so that's the simple answer.
So when the biography came out in 2011, what was the response then?
It was fantastic, actually, and part of the rationale for writing a biography, Julie and I were introduced by a third party who'd worked with both of us independently on a project, and for me it was really important. I sort of felt at that time it was, I guess, 10 years into the Sky Sports, maybe a little bit more, thinking about it, but it seemed to me that we were in danger of losing not just my dad's story, but the contacts that the fans and the club still had to those great players, and we were starting to lose those legends physically, but we were also starting to lose them a bit more metaphorically, I guess. So for me, it was really important to try and stoke the embers of those stories, really.
And when were you first aware of people saying to you, "You're John White's son, not the Spurs John White"? When were
Yeah,
you aware
yeah.
of that?
It's almost exactly that. The way you've just phrased that, almost always, I guess. Yeah, it's sort of always been in my psyche, and at different times in my life, I reacted to it in different ways. Definitely, there was confusion when I was a young kid, being taken to through a family friend. We got taken to sort of quite well, very high level football grounds, and I'd always get taken to a director's tea room or after the game and introduced to the great and the good of 60s and 70s football. And there would always be this, I described it in the book as a cloud of sorrow that passed when people said, "This is John White's son," and you could see the look in. Football's a very nostalgic industry, and very, very important names in football would, grown men would become quite sad at getting introduced to me. Yeah, so I guess it's always been there, that recognition of son of John White, really.
So the play, is it a celebration of John White?
It is indeed. Yeah, it was. I decided to commission it at the end of last year, and for me, it was. I had the partly it was the recognition that I was becoming 60 in January, which also logically meant that it was my dad's. It was the 60th anniversary of my dad's accident, and I think what we've been really careful to do with the play is to label, or not to label it, but to ensure that it is. It's not a. It could have easily been a misery fest, for want of a better phrase. But actually, this is more about celebratory. There are some darker moments in it, but there's also part of the absolutely inspirational thing that I got from my dad's story was the number of times that he was told he was too small, he wasn't good enough, he was too frail, he wasn't going to become the player that he became. And I think that happens, well, it's definitely happened in my life, but I think that's quite a common theme where people, and if we listen to those voices of people that tell us we're not good enough, it can be dangerous stuff. So part of this is about, I still think the the reaction I get from people, the reaction I got from the book and the reaction from the play absolutely validates the reason for me going to these places, I guess.
And it must be good to be coming to Edinburgh or being there
Mm,
because of the Musselburgh connection. Of course, we've got
yeah,
to remember the Scottish teams he played for as well.
exactly. I mean, well, he started his career at Bonnyrigg Rose, then went to Alloa, then went to Falkirk, and then obviously down here in the Scottish national team. Um, and funny enough, I had a conversation with Val Mackay, Dave's daughter, last week, and it was the first time I said to her something about it was about for me it was delivering my dad back home. I actually get quite emotional when I just said that to you, and it does feel weirdly, yeah, strangely like delivering him back home um, because obviously there's a lot of I guess important still for me for that generation again to learn about that a little bit more. I think.
It's also good, important to celebrate. We're watching, we've got the Olympics just over the camera there. I think Tom Daley has won a medal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're both doing the same thing. To celebrate brilliance at a sport, isn't it? And I'd like to think when I put the article on both all websites, is people to say, I want people to say, I remember, and because people are getting on a bit, aren't they? So maybe at
Yes,
the age of 70 saying, oh, I remember John White. He was great. That's really important, isn't it?
it is definitely, and I just think that's part of obviously, like you've just spelled out, is part of the rationale for doing this. But also, I think for me, it's I don't even know if it's egotistical, but there is this desire or push to learn more about my dad, which is it's sort of it's a little bit like it's a conundrum that will never be fulfilled. But just talking to people and like you said, people's reminiscence of I've just had obviously with the launch of the play, there's been a lot of social media around him, and I'm still astounded by people of a certain age, or people of my age, or people of the 50s, of in their 50s, or maybe even earlier, who say their dad said or their grandfather said this was the best Spurs player they ever saw. And I think, yeah, there might be some sort of, I was going to say rose tinted, but that's the wrong phrase, pale blue tinted or navy blue tinted glasses. But I still think it's important to celebrate what an incredible footballer this was.
And his memorabilia, is stuff collected in one place or?
Most of it's collected here. Actually, I've become the de facto curator for it, and I wanted to when the original last week when the performances premiered at the Tottenham Stadium. I wanted to have an exhibition to go alongside that, but the logistics were just too difficult. But actually, in the end, I spent most of my career as a photographer, a studio photographer. So actually, a lot of the stuff was displayed. We got big, three large panels about the size of a door. They were beautifully printed up. I think they're online in various places, but that was my way of just showing people a tiny insight into the things that I've got.
And when you had the play at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium,
Yep.
any of the players there did I see Cliff Jones there?
Yeah, Cliff was there, which is fantastic. Cliff and his wife Joan. Gary Mabbott was there from the club, both of whom I'm lucky enough to know. Cliff, I've got a fantastic relationship with. He was my dad's best mate at Spurs, and I've known Cliff throughout my life. Unfortunately, he's got dementia, but I don't know how. I mean, I think it's known, but it doesn't. I was lucky or unlucky enough, no, lucky enough actually to have been alongside Peter Baker for a lot of his dementia journey. And yeah, so Cliff was there. It was really interesting because there was a family member from Peter Baker's wife was there, Linda. There was Dave Mackay's daughter there, Val. There were three of Terry Medwin's kids there, and there was Bill Brown's nephew was there. And yeah, it was quite nice to sit and think. Actually, it's not a bad five-a-side team. Actually, you got a goalkeeper, two very good forwards. Yeah, so I think if I'd have invited Clive Allen, it would have been a great team.
Very good. So when people go and see the play at the festival, what do you hope when they leave, what do you hope that will remain in their minds?
From a personal point of view, I hope that there's a real appreciation and a recognition of what my dad achieved in 27 years of his life. But I also think from a wider perspective, I found this reaction with the book, actually. I found it with the play the other week or last week. Several people had said to me that they found themselves thinking of their dads while they were watching the play, or something in their family, it really sparked something. And I think for me, that's that's why we're talking here, and I can see the stuff behind you. But one of the brilliant things about sport is that it's a conduit. It's a conduit for memories. It's a conduit for conversations, and for us to look at sort of relationships. So it may be a big hope, but I think if it moves people, that will be, my single or two words is moving people.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.